Francois and Julian will help you put your retirement puzzle together. Catch Planning for a Better and Safer Retirement Saturdays at 9 a.m. on Ocala's News Talk, The Source 96.3 FM and 1370 AM.
25 minutes before 8 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in to WOCA The Source. Nice looking Tuesday morning. 61 degrees. Temperatures climbing into the lower 80s today. It's not a bad day. Only a 10% chance of rain, and that's just the weatherman, covering his butt. Robin, it was maybe not even a year ago, you and I were doing a promotional video, and after we filmed it or videotaped it, whatever you call that, I was working on editing it, and I hadn't noticed when you were in the room. But looking at the videotape, I noticed you were talking like a pirate.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I wonder why she was doing it that way. I don't know. You were like lowering you were lowering your the left side of your mouth, the right side of your mouth. And so then when I saw you the next day, you were still doing it, and I said, "Oh gosh, Robin, that doesn't look good." And it was, long story short, you went to the hospital right away. They took you in because they could see what it was. They feared it might be a stroke. Mm-hmm. Fortunately for you, it was Bell's palsy, which was scary enough as it is.
Yeah.
And you got over it rather quickly, from what they say. I mean, you were done with it in like a week or so.
Yeah.
But it could have been a stroke, and that's why they rushed you in so quickly. So stroke awareness is a really important thing, and had we been smarter the day before when we did the video, we might have gone to the hospital a day earlier. If it had been a stroke, it might have been too late to take you the next day,
Yeah.
Susan Lee is on the phone. She is a registered nurse and a whole bunch of other initials after her name. She is the stroke coordinator at Shasta Regional Medical Center in Redding, California. She helped to develop the stroke program at Mercy Medical Center in Redding, California. And Ruth Wolf is also on the phone. Ruth is a respiratory practitioner and a stroke survivor, also out in California. These ladies must have got up early to be with us here on the East Coast. World Stroke Day is October 29th. They're talking to us about ways to recognize the warning signs of a stroke and acting fast. And FAST is an acronym. I'll let them explain it to you. Good morning, Susan Lee and Ruth Wolf. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you. This is an important message. Am I right? You're both in California?
Well, this is Susan, and I am in California.
And I'm in Hawaii right now.
You're in Hawaii? All right, who's that? All right, who's in Hawaii? Ruth?
Ruth, yes.
Ruth is in Hawaii.
Yes.
And Susan, you're in California?
I am. But we're both lucky girls, aren't we?
I'm just trying to figure out where you are. Okay. Wow. So you got up really early, Ruth. Gosh, what is it, like yesterday? or tomorrow? Well, thank you for being on there. Did you hear the introduction? Robin went through a thing, and it appeared that it might have been a stroke, but it was not.
That's what it sounds like, that she was having symptoms that would be recognized as a stroke, and would be important to get to the hospital, call 911, get in, and have it evaluated to see what's going on. Sometimes it's not a stroke. Luckily, in Robin's case, it was Bell's palsy. But in Ruth's case, she recognized these signs and symptoms very early on, and was able to get to the hospital and get immediate treatment.
Would the symptoms be?
That's a great story.
Are they the same for everybody?
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
Stroke can have all different symptoms, and if one person had a stroke one time, it doesn't mean their symptoms, if they have another stroke, are going to be the same symptoms.
Really?
But so it's good to recognize all those symptoms, and that's when that FAST, you said FAST, F-A-S-T, that comes in. Really recognizing the F is face, ask the person to smile, does one side of the face droop, have them hold out their arms, does one arm drift down, speech, ask the person to repeat a simple phrase, is their speech slurred or strange, and then the T, time to call 911. And no, they don't have to have all those symptoms, and they won't be the same on every person.
And sometimes when a person has a stroke, they don't return to 100% capacity. How can you help them deal with that part of the immobility?
Well, there's two answers to that, Robin. Is first of all, if they get to the hospital early, and we give the clot busting drug, which Ruth was able to get. We gave her the TPA early on, and that really can reduce the disability of stroke. Now, if a person doesn't get in time, then they may have more disability from stroke, or someone still, even after getting medication, might still have some disability, but then we go on to looking at how to modify risk factors so they don't have another stroke, and then rehabilitation, to get back active and into a healthy lifestyle.
What happened, Ruth, with you? Were you at work? Were you driving the car? What was your story?
Well, I had just arrived to a grocery store, and I was sitting in my car talking to my husband on OnStar, and we were ready to meet somewhere for a barbecue, and when I got the phone with him, I just noticed I reached down to get my phone that had fallen down on the floorboard, and when I reached for it, my right hand, I could not grip. I had just lost the ability to pick it up, and so I just thought that was kind of a little bit strange. All day I had been suffering just a mild headache, and which is unrare for me because I'm not one to have headaches, and something just about the combination of that and sitting there with my right arm starting to just kind of be a little bit stiff and so forth. I just thought something's not right. And, I work at a hospital. I'm aware of strokes, and for some reason it hit me that, I'm having these symptoms. And even though there was only just a couple of them, it was enough for me to know that time was of the essence and I needed to get into a hospital. Oh,
wow. Were you still talking to your husband at that time? Did you tell him?
It wasn't even a minute, I would say, and then I called him right back, and and just because I couldn't dial, and I thought I was talking clearly. That's how quickly it happened. And when he responded back, I can't understand you.
Really?
And when he realized, he said, "You're having a stroke." Now, he is a retired fireman EMT, and he knew what was going on. And I knew that he was right there, that he could just pick me up and rush me to the hospital, which was not that far. And that's what happened. And I'm so thankful because of Sue Lee, who was my nurse at the time, and my neurologist. Mm-hmm. And my ER physician that decided, the TPA would be the best treatment of choice for me. And it would be a different story if I had not received that TPA.
Can you explain what TPA is? You've used that expression a couple of times. Maybe it went over my head. Maybe I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, what is that?
Well,
TPA is
go ahead, Sue.
TPA is the medication that we can give for this type of a stroke from a blood clot. So it's a clot-busting medication. You may have heard of it with heart attacks. It's been used for heart attacks for many years, and it's the only approved medication for this type of a stroke to break up that blood clot and get blood flow back to the area of the brain that needs it.
Really? So
the blood flow carries the oxygen, and if you don't have the oxygen to the brain, that's when brain tissue starts to die.
So that's what Ruth. I mean, so I'm forgive me for not even really knowing the definition of a stroke. So a stroke is a blood clot in the brain?
Yes. Yeah.
It can be. There are three types of stroke. One would be caused from a blood clot in the brain, not getting enough blood flow, and then about 15% of strokes are caused from bleeding in the brain, where a blood vessel can rupture and you have bleeding into the brain. And then we have TIAs, which are a warning sign of a stroke, a transient ischemic attack, and that's very important too, to recognize a warning sign, because it could mean an impending stroke in the future.
We met a guy in the park. We have some beautiful parks here, by the way, just to promote our area a little bit. But anyway, we met a gentleman in the park. He was an older guy, maybe in his 80s. He was with his son, probably in his 60s, and they had been driving. Was it from Michigan, Wisconsin?
Yeah,
they were coming from someplace far away. Well, they were heading there, and then they turned around and came back because the father had a stroke. And I was standing there talking to the guy, and he didn't seem like anything was wrong with him. I mean, he had already been in the hospital and back out, so it wasn't like he was going through it at that moment. But there was no telltale, like I didn't see, like I always thought after a stroke you had visible remnants of it. Is that not always true, or is it ever true?
No. Oh, well, it is sometimes true. It can be very debilitating, depending on what vessel in the brain is affected, how much of the brain is lost, and whether early treatment was given so that the stroke can be stopped while the symptoms are still mild. So, treating mild symptoms may prevent a person having the debilitating big symptoms that you see where you require care. You know, the last thing anyone wants is having to be cared for and not being able to be independent. And stroke is a very it's our number one debilitating disease we have in this country. And as I always tell my patients, I'm talking disability where you can't toilet yourself, you can't feed yourself. You're just not seeing those people because they're not out and about.
I
so
see. It's
very
goodness.
bad, and it's very devastating.
So good idea or bad idea? If you feel the symptoms coming on, take an aspirin or do nothing. What's the advice?
Oh, great question. Do not take an aspirin. This is where people get their wires crossed with heart and stroke.
Yeah.
They're both diseases of the blood vessels. They're both vascular diseases. But with a heart attack, yes, take the aspirin. With a stroke, because about 15 to 20% of these are caused by bleeding in the brain, taking an aspirin would make that situation worse. So what we do when they come to, like when Ruth showed up at the ER, very quickly, the first thing we do is do a CAT scan of their brain to make sure there's no bleeding in the brain. If there's no bleeding, then we can give the clot-busting drug PPA if that's indicated. If it's not, because of the time frame of too many hours have gone by, because we can only give that medication within the first 3 hours, then we give the aspirin.
How you doing now, Ruth?
That's important.
For the most part,
how are you doing now, Ruth?
I'm doing well. I'm back. I'm back at coaching and working. And doing a lot of advocate for stroke.org, showing people that you can come back. You can come back strong, and there's a lot of information on stroke.org to learn about stroke, the post-stroke survivors. The only thing that I have problems with now is a little bit with my speech, especially when I'm tired.
Oh, me too.
And so, but otherwise, I'm just so grateful that there is resources out there, because there's a lot of questions that when people find out that I've had a stroke, first they look at me and they can't believe that, and it can happen to anybody. That's the thing, is people have these misconceived that you have to be in your 80s or your 60 to 80s to have these strokes. There's no way that people that are young that have them, and
oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Well, ladies, I appreciate the fact that you got up so early to do this. I'm convinced that you are saving lives just by doing these radio interviews, and I know I went over, so I'm guessing there's probably somebody chomping at the bit waiting to get you on another station. Thank you both for being on the air with us. The website that you gave us was stroke.org. Are there any other websites we should know about?
I think that one will link you to wherever you need to be, but it is very helpful.
Okay.
And Robin, I'm so glad that you did not have a stroke and it was Bell's palsy.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Me too.
Yeah, we were all glad. Yeah. Again, Susan and Ruth, thank you, ladies. And if you're ever in Florida, it's a nice place to visit.
Yes, we have palm trees.
Beautiful. Okay.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we will take a little break, and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. It'll be partly sunny and increasingly windy today. There can be a shower along the coast, the high 80 to 84.